Creative Living, utilizing today's technology with the best of the past to bring you innovative ideas and up-to-date information for creative lifestyles in today's active world. With your host, Sheryl Borden.
Thanks so much for joining me today for Creative Living. We're going to learn about nightshades, and we'll show how to make a mug rug with a classic look, as well as talk to a doctor of Oriental medicine. One of my guests today is Carol Fenster, and she's a nutritionist and author who will demonstrate some substitutes for a category of vegetables called nightshades that seem to be able to promote joint inflammation. Carol's business is Savory Palette, and she lives in Centennial, Colorado. Another guest is Claire Rowley, and she's going to demonstrate how to make a mug rug, which is a coffee cup coaster. Her company is Creative Feet, and she's from Prescott Valley, Arizona. My first guest today is Dr. Daniel Mattis, and he's a doctor of Oriental medicine who's written a book on relieving pain in 3 seconds. Dr. Mattis is going to share his journey from being a licensed optician to becoming a healer and acupuncturist. He lives in Raton, New Mexico. Dr. Mattis, it's so nice to have you with us today and to be able to talk about acupuncture. I've been to an acupuncture doctor, and so I'm not nearly as afraid of the procedure. But you know, there might be some people watching that have never been and may think that it's extremely painful and all that. And before we get into that though, you actually changed medical fields because you felt so strongly about helping people help themselves.
Yes, that's when I worked in the emergency room, I noticed that we weren't getting really good results, and we were just using more pain meds and more pain meds, and I realized that there had to be another way to treat these people. So that's where I started researching other modalities of treatment, and acupuncture seemed to fit my philosophy of preventive medicine, of teaching people how to treat themselves. What can you do for yourself? I include nutrition with every treatment. Hydrotherapy, do people, are they hydrate, drinking enough fluids? And it's critical in New Mexico because this is a dry state. And if you live here long enough, then you become dry too. I just came back from California and my skin felt better out there, my hair felt better, and then I came back here.
And more humid climates. How did you decide though, I know you said you wanted to help people be able to help themselves, but you really became passionate about it.
Well, I became passionate more was when I was given a project by a Native American nurse up in Canada. She wanted to learn how to get rid of pain instantly, so I told her, let me come up with something that makes it easy for you to learn, because acupuncture school now in California I think is 9 years, and she didn't want to go to school for 9 years, so I came up with my book. It was really easy to use, and when I called her, they said, well, she went to Vancouver. And so there was my only connection with a Native American tribe. But I've always been interested in instant pain relief. We live in a drive-through society. You drive through to get your money at the bank. You drive through to get your food. So people are craving for something like this.
And how do you mentioned using nutrition. Is that, how much of a part of your practice is the good nutrition?
It's a big part, because there's foods that'll make a condition worse, but there's also foods that'll make a condition better. So depending on the diagnosis will depend on what their nutritional intake should be.
What's an example?
Okay, say for example, low back pain. You see a lot of low back pain. People will tell me their back pain is worse in the morning or their back pain is worse in the wintertime, and I'll ask them why. Well, they say, well, of course, the cold weather. Well, if the cold weather makes your pain worse, why are you drinking ice cold water? Why are you putting cold foods into your body? Makes sense.
So, I see.
What I also see with people with low back pain, they have a tendency to like salt. Salt's really hard on the kidneys. And also, people who sit a lot, that's hard on your back pain too. So I tell people, get up every 15, 20 minutes, just get up and move around. And then go ahead and sit down. Because we live in a computer society now, so everybody's on the sitting down, working the computer. So it's even more critical now than say 20, 30, 40 years ago.
And is it true that if you're treating someone, let's say their elbow, I had read that you actually treat an opposite?
Yes,
and by opposite, does it mean the other elbow or just an opposite place on the same arm?
Opposite place. So for example, for right elbow pain, I put a needle in the left knee. And for right knee pain, I put a needle in the left elbow. So opposites.
Now this is all based on Qi And in energy form, is
Well,
that
this is
right?
all experiential. So this has been experimented for hundreds of years, and
yeah.
that's how they find out what works better than other points. So basically the book is the best of the best points.
But the thing about your book is that it's for us to do ourselves. We don't have to go to a doctor. It's acupuncture on proven, no, it's acupressure on proven acupuncture points.
Correct. This is for somebody not an average headache, an average shoulder pain, hip pain, knee pain, but for somebody with 3 metal rods in their back, this is probably not going to help that much. But for the average pain, this is dynamite.
How does it compare in cost if you go to see a different type of doctor versus going to see an acupuncturist?
Okay, here in New Mexico, all the insurance companies pay for acupuncture now.
Oh, it's covered by insurance.
Yes, I'm a provider with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Presbyterian, Loveless, Cigna, United. The VA is doing acupuncture now. Medicare in this state is paying for acupuncture. Some Medicare plans, some Medicaid plans are paying for acupuncture, which is unheard of in the whole country. So New Mexico is ahead of the whole country, I believe, with acupuncture.
How would you suggest finding the best acupuncturist to go to?
First, I would ask any of your friends who are seeing an acupuncturist for recommendation, and then I would go to 3 or 4 different acupuncturists, and then see who spends the most time with you, who's teaching you, who's spending more time with you, and some people, they don't even talk. They come in, put the needles in, they leave. And for me, this is my time to shine. This is my time to teach you about what's going on with you, your condition, what's good for you as far as nutrition-wise, stay away from certain foods, eat more of other certain foods. So I try to press preventive medicine. Preventive medicine is the best medicine, I believe.
And you said maybe it's because your dad was a teacher that you feel that that's part of your teaching role.
My father was a teacher in college, and he was voted the most outstanding teacher in college years and years after each other. So my passion for teaching, I believe, comes from him.
Well, it sounds like it. Well, I know it was certainly something that I was anxious to try, and your book really is great because it shows us things that we can do either on ourselves or on our family and friends and help them out. Thank you very much. I appreciate the information.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Claire, when you said we were going to make mug rugs, I have to admit I didn't even know what we were talking about. People have been making placemats for years and usually using quilting fabric, and they kind of they look like a quilted project. Yours is totally different.
Yes, and I'm very excited to show them. I didn't know what they were either. All of a sudden, everyone started talking about mug rugs, and they're mostly little quilts, but I thought, why don't we use some high fashion or home dec fabrics instead?
And that's what you've done here on this one.
Yes.
This almost feels like a suede fabric and an upholstery fabric. It's just, and then you have to have these special presser foot to do to make it look that correct.
And I learned something because I was going to use real leather, and leather will not fuse onto this.
Even though these are fusible, because you can't get it hot enough?
It wouldn't fuse to the sueded side or the leather side, which makes it a pressing cloth. Leather can be a pressing cloth.
And these are all double-sided. They have fusible
and this is a product by Bosel. You can get them already cut. They're already cut, and they come in a pack of 4, so you can have
that's nice.
Yeah, make all 4 of them at once.
And you mentioned making these and having them like for Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yes,
or
these are going to be used on my Thanksgiving table this year.
That's great.
Yes.
And you said we're going to need 2 presser feet. And
Correct.
tell about, let's start with the pearls. And well, no, we were going to use this one first.
Right.
Let's look at it.
So as you look on the one here that we've started already, we have a finish that I've done. And I did that because on the original one, the fabric started to fray because it's upholstery fabric. So doing a satin stitch first using the satin edge foot, it has a little wire. And by turning this nut, you change the wire's location. And that wire actually sits right off the edge of the fabric.
And that
looking here,
turns it to the back and keeps it from fraying.
It actually
That's wonderful.
prevents the fabric from rolling under at all and allows you to form a zigzag stitch on just about any fabric. It's sometimes difficult to sew through thicknesses like this. We can actually finish a quilt using the satin edge foot. So we'll go ahead and put it on.
So you're going to put it on first, and in a minute we'll show the purls and piping.
Correct. And each of these feet do come with adapters to accommodate every sewing machine.
Every sewing machine. That's amazing.
But before we begin sewing, we should discuss how not to ruin all of your mug rug fusible battings.
Okay.
By first knowing that if you fuse on one side, you're fusing on the other side at the same time. So what we want to do is make sure you fuse one side completely and cut.
Oh.
Otherwise, you see how when you flip it over, you can't tell where it is? So in order to cut this side correctly, you must first cut the back. All the way around.
So we just fused one side at a time.
And that could be an easy mistake for
wouldn't have
someone
thought
to
about
make. And what's nice about this technique is we don't have to overlap seams or sew a seam at all. These are just two fabrics butt up next to each other. And then I satin stitch down that first as well.
It ties them together and holds them in place.
So this is how the satin edge foot works for this. We take and place the presser foot off the edge and choose the zigzag stitch width that you like to use. And in this case, I'm going to go
fairly narrow, isn't it?
I'm going to go a little bit wider because we have such a thick fabric, and it can bear the width of the stitch.
Now, when you're twisting that, what is that moving?
We're moving the little wire over.
The wire.
Because the width of the stitch changes the position that the needle comes down into the machine.
I see.
And that needs to be off the edge. And I have my machine set to tie a knot, but I'm on the wrong side of the wire right now. So there we go. And this is me learning this machine. Notice my hand positioning is not holding
You're not holding it at all.
So always at the beginning, I lengthen the stitch, and then I shorten it. This way, when we come back over, we are securing the beginning and the end of the stitch by sewing over where we already started. Your hand positioning should never be down, always just supporting underneath. And this is going to take quite a while, which is why we already have one sewn, but watch how we just negotiate around the corner, never looking at the needle of the machine, but rather the front leading edge of the presser foot.
And that's what it's for, is to, like you say, it's the leading edge.
And now we're going to go ahead and show how to sew the cording on to the edge of that.
And that's,
see how pretty that stitch is.
Oh, boy, it's nice and tight.
And it's the same on the top and the bottom.
Uh-huh.
So if you can't afford a serger or an overlock machine, that's a solution for you.
Okay. Now this one is the purls and piping machine.
Correct. And the purls and piping foot, it doesn't look like it can handle something so big, and it can handle even larger trims than that.
Oh.
And you see how the trim just slides, but it would be going in this direction as you're watching. You're not watching the needle, you're watching the front of the foot.
Always
and notice that it can't escape. So that means you never have to hold on to the trim when you're sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on.
And there, like you mentioned, in each package there are adapters. So if you, regardless of the brand of sewing machine you have.
It doesn't matter what make or model. All you need is a zigzag stitch to do this. And we have matching thread in the needle and the bobbin.
Oh,
And we're going to tie a knot by using a straight stitch for a couple stitches, forward and then back. And now switch to a zigzag stitch. Choose the width that you like or follow the instructions that I am going to include with the pattern for how to do this. And we adjust the width so that it strikes the fabric and goes over the trim.
Right.
And see how my hands do not touch the trim at all. Oh, the whole table's shaking. Now watch as I go around the curve with my hand not touching the trim.
You're not touching the trim at all.
Right, you should not touch it because it will cause the fabrics to pucker.
Oh.
So we can really get going on this. See how fast this is?
It's fascinating.
Imagine, how quickly you can complete your entire place setting with that.
And we were talking earlier, this, of course, is a fall-like fabric, kind of an upholstery fabric. And you were saying it would be so pretty at a wedding.
Yes. Oh, yes. Look at this trim. Imagine making champagne rugs. Champagne glass rugs.
Oh, how nice for the bride and groom.
I think I might just have to make some patterns for that.
I think you should. Well, this is just fascinating, and you make it just look like such fun besides being easy.
It really is easy and fun.
Well, thank you so much for showing us what a mug rug is.
It's my pleasure.
Carol, thank you so much for coming. I always learn so much. I hope I can retain part of it. But the last time you were here, I specifically talked to you about nightshades.
You did.
It was something I just barely heard of in conjunction with family members who were on gluten-free diets. And you said when you came back, you'd talk about that, and I'm so glad.
And here I am, I'm back.
You are, and let's talk about nightshades.
Okay. Well, they're a category of vegetables, and what a diverse set of vegetables. They look at the wide
and how
variety.
Beautiful, colorful.
Peppers and eggplants and tomatoes and potatoes. But this diverse set of vegetables all has one thing in common, and that's an alkaloid called solanine, spelled S-O-L-A-N-I-N-E.
Solanine.
Solanine. And it's thought that for some people, including those with arthritis, that irritates the joints and makes them a little sore. So what I get are questions about, I rarely get questions about how do I replace my eggplant. But I get questions a lot about foods.
Potatoes and tomatoes.
Exactly, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's take tomatoes first. We always think of pasta as having a red sauce. It doesn't have to.
In the marinara sauce?
The marinara, sure. But it doesn't have to. Of course, we have things like fettuccine Alfredo. But my idea is to use something called basil pesto.
Which I love.
Oh, I love too. It's so flavorful. It's made from fresh basil and Parmesan and good things like garlic. And just toss the cooked pasta in that. So that's one idea.
So the pasta's okay.
The pasta's okay.
We're talking about ways to replace the tomatoes.
And this happens to be gluten-free pasta, but you could use regular pasta, whatever you want to use. Then when it
Let me back up just a minute.
Yeah.
Why is it called nightshades? When I heard that, I looked it up on the internet.
I looked that up, and according to the internet, we think it's because these particular plants bloom or flower at night. Now, I've never gone out to my garden to check it out, frankly, but that's apparently how, and they like to bloom in the shade, or be in the shade a little bit. So that's how they got the name.
I see.
Isn't that interesting?
It did. Sounded like a window treatment to me.
It does, like a roller or something.
Okay, excuse me.
So let's say you wanted to make pizza and you couldn't have a tomato sauce. Another idea would be to use the basil pesto again. And you would I do this in restaurants. Sometimes I'll say, instead of, the regular toppings, could you spread my pizza with basil pesto? And that's what they do. And then they put the toppings on top of that. If that isn't to your liking, another idea is something called hummus, which is really pureed chickpeas.
Chickpeas. I always forget what it is.
They're also called garbanzo beans.
Yes,
you could
garbanzo.
make this be the base. It's very fragrant. You can buy it in different flavors. This is just
I can smell the garlic.
Isn't that
It smells
yummy
good.
smelling? So that's another idea. And then you can put your toppings on top of that.
Just like everybody else.
And we need to sort of get over the idea that pizzas need to be red. They don't need to be red. They can be any color we want. So
it's certainly gotten easier, hasn't it, with restaurants and eating out?
Incredibly easier, right. They seem much more in tune with our allergic needs and much more willing to help us to dine. And that's really,
that's great.
That's really great. So that is what you might try
for
tomatoes. Yeah. So let's talk about what you might use in place of potatoes. One idea is the good old sweet potato, which I happen to love.
I love those.
What people don't realize is this really isn't a potato per se, not in the same category as
it's
we'll put
not?
this down.
I didn't know
it's
that.
a member of the morning glory family. Isn't that interesting?
It's
totally unrelated.
Well, the vine looks
and
just like
this is actually
the morning
one
glory.
of the least allergenic foods on earth. And I happen to love sweet potato fries, and I like them mashed. And when I fix potatoes for my family, I fix sweet for me and white for the rest of them, because I love it so much.
I do too.
But one of the things we miss the most in the potato category
I was thinking of mashed
potatoes. So I don't know who thought of this, but it was very clever, and I've developed my own take on it. Cauliflower. Cauliflower is totally unrelated to any of these. It's a member of the cruciferous family, which means it's a cabbage, really.
Cruciferous.
Cruciferous, right. And what we do with this is literally mash it into mashed cauliflower potatoes.
I love to eat cauliflower.
So just to give you an idea of how we do that, I've trimmed away some. By the way, you want to choose the white because, as I was reminded yesterday when I was doing the shopping, cauliflower comes in yellow and green and lavender or purple. So you want white
I've seen
mashed
the purple.
potatoes.
No, I don't think I would find that
So what
appealing.
you want to do is cook the cauliflower, and I'm showing you a steamer. The experts recommend that you steam this sort of thing rather than cook it in water because you'll retain more of the nutrients. You know, if you don't want to do that, that's okay, but I'm just showing you what a steamer looks like. So what you do is you steam it in the basket over until it's about 10 or 12 minutes in the basket, and it will be very soft, and then you puree it in a food processor. And I have found that the food processor works better than
the mixer,
the blender,
or the blender.
because unless you like your mashed cauliflower potatoes really chunky, I think you'll want to do it with the food processor.
Okay, thanks
and
for that
then,
tip.
just like regular mashed potatoes, we mix it with all the good stuff. Milk, or this could be cream. If you want to really go for it, it could be cream. Butter, and here I've shown a dairy substitute if you wanted to do that. Sour cream, there are also sour cream substitutes if you can't have dairy. And the Parmesan cheese, there's also substitutes for that if you wanted dairy-free. And of course, garlic and a little bit of onion powder. And what you get is what looks like mashed potatoes.
These look, I thought you had brought those as a
They
prop.
look just regular. Now, here's the really interesting thing, too, that you'll learn. You're getting far fewer calories because 1 cup of cooked cauliflower has only 25 calories. That's like next to nothing compared to like 115 for a cup of cooked white potato. Glycemic index, which is a measure of how these foods spike our blood sugar, the glycemic index of the cauliflower is only 15, whereas for white potatoes like this, it's 76. It's like 5 times higher.
So diabetics could
Yeah,
really
it
benefit
probably
from
depends on how much of the
incorporating
other
this.
stuff you put in it, of course. But that's something to consider that I hadn't thought about. So cauliflower is a good thing.
It really is. And now you have several great cookbooks on gluten-free, and what we've always said is even if a person isn't gluten intolerant, but some members of the family are, it's great to go ahead and cook that way if that's what you want to do.
Right, and you know, our ingredients are getting so much better now. Gluten-free is becoming very popular. So our food is looking and tasting so much better than it used to. And I think whole families, even if they're not all gluten-free, can eat the gluten-free food and enjoy it and really not mind that they're not eating the gluten they thought they were getting.
So gluten-free is different from celiac disease how?
Well, celiac disease is an autoimmune condition where gluten, which is a protein in wheat and barley and rye, literally damage the lining of the small intestine, which inhibits absorption, and people get malnourished and anemia, osteoporosis. It's an autoimmune condition, and there's really no treatment except a gluten-free diet. Then there's the other kind of gluten intolerance, which is just called gluten intolerance, or now we have a new word for it called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and that's what I have. I'm not celiac. I've been tested. I don't have it, but I do get sick when I eat gluten. And there's about 17 or 18 million people like me, whereas there's only about 3 million celiacs. So and our symptoms are quite diverse, although they can be quite diverse with celiac too. That makes it hard to diagnose. But the difference is my immune system is not involved in the same way. My gut, my intestines are not involved. I tend to get sick from the neck up, which is nasal congestion and sinus problems and what we lovingly call brain fog, when you're kind of
Out of it.
out of it, you know.
Do the symptoms come on quickly?
They can, but that's another variation. With some celiacs, they can get sick just like
Immediately.
that. Others, they don't have symptoms at all, which is scary because the damage is still being done.
I see.
In my case, it will kind of load through the day. So if I had gluten at each meal, by evening, I would
You'd be feeling it then.
yeah, and by the next morning, I would be full-blown incapacitated. So it varies with different people.
Well, I can't wait to try my cauliflower potato recipe. And I always appreciate you bringing so much information about new foods. And like you say, there's so many more choices available to everyone now in the grocery store. But I've learned a lot about nightshades that I didn't know. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. Next time on Creative Living, we'll learn how to use PVC pipe for making a dollhouse. We'll discuss how to turn machine embroidery into a profitable business and demonstrate making breads with figs. One of my next guests is going to show how to construct a dollhouse using PVC pipe, which is not only lightweight but very sturdy. She'll also show a product called Magic Foam, which can become instant upholstery. Another guest will talk about how to turn machine embroidery into a profitable home business, and this is actually one that she works with through her nonprofit organization. And finally, we'll talk to a chef who is a culinary consultant to the California Fig Advisory Board. He knows that when figs are added to baked goods, the finished recipe has a higher moisture content, which contributes to a longer shelf life. All of these topics will be featured on the next Creative Living show. If you ever have comments or suggestions or ideas for shows, you can email me at cheryl.borden@enmu.edu. I'd also like to ask you to become a fan of Creative Living on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and in the search window type in Creative Living with Sheryl Borden. Thanks so much. I hope you'll plan to join me next time for Creative Living.
We are very pleased to offer you a new booklet that accompanies this series of Creative Living. This booklet is titled the 6900 Series, and it features a wonderful collection of ideas and information, and it's available free of charge on our website. Posted as a PDF file, you can simply download the entire booklet or just the segments you're most interested in. For your copy of this new booklet, go to our website at KENW.org and then click on Creative Living. Scroll down to the booklet section and you can click on this booklet or on any of the other booklets that we have available online. We also would like to invite you to sign up for our free e-newsletter. Just go to KENW.org and click on the Sign Up Now button. Thank you.